Welcome, everybody. Thank you for making the time today. Thank you especially to the people who are going to be speaking in the panel sessions that we have coming up. This is the third workshop that this entity that has been more recently named MOCEAN is putting on. So MOCEAN stands for Our Mission is the Ocean. So, and today's workshop is about driving opportunities for diversity, equity, and excellence throughout the offshore wind workforce pipeline. And you see the schedule that's listed at the top. So I'm going to make a few remarks, Farah a couple, then we're going to spend the majority of times on the panel discussions. And the way the panel discussions are working is we have 4 people that each speak for about 6 minutes. And then we have about a 15-minute discussion. That discussion will be nowhere near what is in fact actually needed on these topics. So we're going to ask you to make extensive use of the chat. So please use chat to introduce yourself. Please share links, identify people that we want to maybe be reaching out to. If there's reports that you're aware of that we should be know about, then please let us know that as well. We will be saving and sharing the chat record with everybody who was invited to participate in this meeting. So feel free to expound on various ideas as you wish. We're going to have some people monitoring the chat of questions during the panels, and we're going to probably pick from those list of questions first before we open it up. And how much time there will be available for questions during the discussion, we don't yet know. So it is advantageous if you got a question that you'd really like the panel to discuss, please mention it while things are going along. Farah, anything that I missed before I make a couple remarks? You're muted, following your own advice. Yep.
I think that's it, Dan.
Very
Go
good.
ahead.
Okay, so MOCEAN was the name we gave to an entity that submitted a proposal for $160 million to the National Science Foundation in their engines program, which is about how do you make investments in research technology to improve characteristics across a region that addresses the global challenge, social justice issues, the environment, and a fairly broad area. And so ours was title of our proposal, which is really what the mission of MOCEAN is about, is accelerating a just energy transition while nurturing healthy oceans and new blue economies through innovative nature inclusive offshore wind farms. And we sort of imagine we're very much working in the reducing CO2 space. It's about growing the local economy. It's about eco-justice. It's about a just energy transition. And a key part of all of that is the jobs, which is the focus of today. The region that this MOCEAN and NSF proposal was to be focused on is that for where the wind energy developments are happening in the next 10 years, mostly, which is about $100 billion investment, as we all know. So this is a list of people who got together on that proposal, but in reality, we've been interfacing and there's been so many groups doing sort of some parallel things that we are doing. And it's fantastic that we can come together and talk about our various thoughts and ideas. And that's been a motivation for hosting these workshops. General motivation, you folks are probably all very aware of this, but we're losing a lot of our coral, primarily due to coral bleaching. We have challenges for the fishing community already in the ocean environment due to warming oceans, moving of where fish stocks are, and general depletion, and some management practices that may not be as effective as we would like them to be due to various complexities. We recognize that the ocean isn't its own thing, but the ocean is really part of the global ecosystem. And we've been losing marine habitats and biodiversity at a really, really fast rate. And so this is a key aspect of what we care about as well. One of the other motivating factors for the proposal we put forth is from the 6,000 oil and gas platforms we put in the Gulf of Mexico. We know what happens. You put them in right away, you're starting to get marine growth and habitats. And some very good things happened, even without a lot of design forethought. But with good design forethought, we are anticipating that there is fabulous opportunities through the development of offshore wind to bring positive benefits to the marine ecosystem. And there are many images now as well for wind turbine structures that are in the water in the US and overseas. Just how quickly marine growth and habitats develop is very impressive. And there is a whole industry out there unrelated to offshore wind energy, which is looking at how we create geometries, what materials we use, and what surface textures in order to foster the development of certain types of marine growth and habitats. And there are great visions for how we think about compensating for our loss in some areas in the marine environment of coral reefs and biodiversity with creating new types of enhanced ecosystems. And over the last few years, you hear much more conversation, people talking about this idea of turbine reefs. If there can exist an artificial reef community that is putting in things into the water to help restore, well then, if we're putting things in the water for offshore wind, we should be putting them in so they serve as turbine reefs. So that's my introduction, and then Farah is going to take it on from here.
Thanks, Dan. So clearly we all know that offshore wind's about a lot more than just building turbines, and the associated workforce needs are much more complex than just the skill sets needed to install and maintain them. Given the anticipated scale and pace of deployment that we're looking to meet in order to achieve the nation's decarbonization goals, those first order jobs, construction, trades, have been the immediate focus of attention and investment in training, and appropriately so. But in our first panel, we're going to take a broader look at what's being seen within the industry as other critical job gaps, capacity building needs, and big opportunities for different career paths. We'll be followed by a second panel that will look at these challenges from the other side, considering what it takes to connect with, inspire, train, and support career seekers in meeting industry needs. But first, just let me do some introductions for the first panel. I'm going to introduce everyone briefly and then ask the panelists when they're done to just hand off to the next person, just to keep the flow going. So our first speaker will be Joel Whitman, president of FOSS Offshore Wind, and he'll be talking about maritime workforce recruitment challenges. Joel has been with the US offshore wind industry from the beginning and has always been a big thinker and thought leader. So we're looking forward to hearing his insights in this area. Bob Snook is the Assistant Attorney General for the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. He'll be talking about transmission needs. Now, transmission is often something in the early years of the industry that was an afterthought. It's actually a primary piece of the offshore wind puzzle, and more importantly, it's connected to the overall energy transition that we're in. And because of the deployment scale of offshore wind, a lot of the challenges about needing to inject large quantities of large-scale renewables into the grid is really being highlighted due to the rapid pace of the offshore wind industry. So Bob will be talking about what he's seeing around those needs. Jennifer Downing is the executive director of the New Bedford Ocean Cluster. She's working in a variety of ways, and one of them is with existing companies that have a place in the offshore wind space and working on capacity building there and building an ecosystem that will support a variety of place-based activities around offshore wind. And Mark Huang is the founding director of See Ahead, and he's going to be talking about the innovation needs and opportunities and what we're seeing in the innovation space around offshore wind. So with that, I'll hand it off to Joel.
Thank you very much, Farah and Joel. Just before Joel gets underway, we've had, we're about at 70 participants, so a lot of people missed me saying, please introduce yourself in chat. If you have questions as the panels go through, please add them into the chat as well as share any other information that you think would be helpful for those connected together today.
Sounds good. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Farah. I'll ask the universal question. How would you like to advance the slides? Just ask verbally and someone else will do it?
It will magically happen by me. Yes.
Awesome. Good to meet everybody. Thank you for your interest in our topic this morning. My name is Joel Whitman. I am the president, as Farah said, of Foss Offshore Wind. We are a very old marine transportation company headquartered in Seattle. Actually, advanced me, Dan, because I think I got this on the next slide. Yep. And so the company has been involved in marine transportation of all types for a long time, since the 1880s. And over the last couple of years has made a very big bet on offshore wind. Two areas of key responsibilities or focus for us and have developed into responsibilities are that I'm going to talk about today as it relates to jobs are New Bedford terminal development and then transportation and what that actually looks like in offshore wind. So we're owned by Saltchuk, which is kind of the largest operator of Jones Act vessels in the United States. It's the umbrella owner of dozens of companies, all in certain types of, mostly in certain types of transportation. And so we're in good company, Foss's. Next slide, please. So a year ago, we bought a derelict power plant in New Bedford, Massachusetts. This is a plant that had been built in the early 1900s. It was, I think, the largest building or one of the largest buildings in New Bedford. At its peak, it generated 30 megawatts of electricity. It was actually set up on the New Bedford waterfront. It's a bit apocryphal, but there's a building on the site next to it, still there, that was claimed to be where Thomas Edison set up his first turbine in the New Bedford area, in the New England area. And so that site in New Bedford became a energy or a power generation site. The actual facility itself was mothballed, I believe, in the mid 1990s, and was used for various storage, fuel storage and things until we bought it. We are at the very far end of knocking the building down and or knocking the whole facility down. It's about 7 warehouses plus the big tanks plus the main turbine hall. And we are putting in what you see in front of you. This is our phase 1 diagram. And it helps explain the kind of jobs in the space. To the left of the page there, you'll see we're putting in small vessel berth. This will be able to handle anything, a small tug, CTV, anything around 40 meters or so. We'll start off with 4 berths in 2023 or late 2023, and then we'll grow that as needs up to, I think, 12 or 15. And then just in the center of the diagram is a deep water berth. This will be able to handle any vessel that can get through the hurricane barrier in New Bedford can berth at this site. And then over the course of the development, we'll be developing 2 other deep water berths. And then on the north side, in the picture you see behind me, that's the north side as it is today, where we're putting in a temporary berth for work this summer. So we're in deep construction on this. We've hired a number of local contracting companies who are rebuilding our waterfront and rebuilding the property itself now that demolition is pretty much concluded. Why do you guys care about this? Because this is where a lot of the jobs for offshore wind will show up. If you think about it in 3 categories: 1, the waterfront; 2, the shore side; 3, the back office. For today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the waterfront and the shore side. Back office, I won't cover too much. It gets covered a lot. I think one of the key things that people ask us all the time is, how do we get involved? Well, I can tell you right now, on the water side, there is a shortage in the US currently of qualified mariners. And so we are struggling to, across our business, struggling to fill slots. And we are really looking for offshore wind to become a recruiting vehicle for the unions that we use. We use different unions in different parts of the country so that they can grow their ranks and develop, kind of the workforce necessary for offshore wind. And I can't speak for those unions, except to say that we've spent a lot of time working to kind of educate them and people in general about working offshore. This is not a transportation job or even an onshore wind job where you go home at night. You live on these vessels or you travel back and forth to these vessels. And so it's very much a lifestyle. You'll be 2 weeks offshore, give or take, and 2 weeks off, and you'll work in all kinds of weather. There's even increasing desire to be working in winter. And so working in this kind of marine environment where you're not having to travel the world, you can actually stay in your region or certainly on the East Coast, is something that we're very eager to educate people about. I would say the tricky part is it takes time to develop mariners. You can't snap your finger and have people be qualified and ready to go. But I do believe that companies like Foss and Saltchuk in general are tier 2 contractors, meaning that you have the developer at the top, and then they hire, in the US, hire an EPCI, and these are going to be the prime contractors. And in our case here, it's going to be at like Vineyard Wind, for example, it's GE, it's their turbines, and it's DEME, it's a tier 1 European contractor that's done offshore wind for a long time. They will be the ones hiring companies like ours, who are in turn hiring the Americans to do the work. They hire some themselves, but really the rank and file will come from the folks that are operating terminals like this and then operating the vessels that come in and out. Next one, Dan.
And Bob, you say, Joel, time goes by incredibly quickly. So if you could finish up in the next minute, that would be most beneficial.
No problem. No problem. I just explained this slide, so you get a freebie on that one. And then the next one, transportation. Okay, this one and then the one behind it are important. So the idea here is you've got turbines that are coming in to the terminal from someplace, a factory. In the case of Vineyard Wind, they're coming in from Europe and coming in from Canada. Those come in on vessels, they get put at the terminal, and then they go from the terminal out to the site. Those go out to the site on barges that are pulled by tugs. And so again, when it comes to being a mariner in the space, we're looking for, and it's not just us, everyone in the space is looking for people who are working on the vessels, who are kind of coming up through the various local colleges that are training folks for doing this kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of them. A lot of them were on your sheet that you showed earlier, Dan, members in this. And we see using Foss's expertise and our background and our niche to be a good way to educate people on what the track might be for some, maybe a young person that's in college today or even in high school thinking about where they want to go. Following them through or working with the local unions, working with the local training facilities so that they might be ready to go in a few years. And then my last slide, that one, we'll share these later, but that's an example of the kind of projects and the jobs that are out there, the kind of assets that are out there and the jobs they require. These are very large fleet of tugs, very large fleet of barges and equipment related to that, all specialty jobs. There's very little generic jobs on this. So it's all good, high paying jobs, good wages. And then I think that's pretty much it for me. And you'll get your minute. Yes. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Joel. And the way I'm going to do is I'm going to keep my video off, but if you see my video camera turn on, what it means is you're down to the last minute as a visual clue. Hey, Bob.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Connecticut, I work for Connecticut Deep in the transmission planning side, and not to rain on anyone's parade, but to just let people know that we do have some real issues in the workforce development to have the necessary transmission infrastructure to transition to a clean energy future. Offshore wind is a critical part of it, but it is not the only part. If you might notice the map behind me, those pink and red markers are indications of areas of the grid that we know right now that we need to address in the next 2 to 3 years to integrate any significant amount of offshore wind from the BOEM leasehold. We are significantly behind. We need about, some people say, a newspaper article today suggests that we need to do about 3 times as much transmission development as we have been doing in the last decade in order to integrate offshore and other clean energy resources such as onshore wind and solar. In short, the grid for a fossil-based, 1950s, 1960s style power generation is not the transmission grid that we need for a clean energy future. Without going into the details, it will require a wholesale transformation. To do that, we need not only, and I think most people recognize we're going to need the manufacturing, at least 10,000 jobs according to NREL, and just manufacturing the equipment to build this part of the grid. Beyond that, we need, and this is not going to be intuitively obvious, I think, to most of the public, We need the state regulators, that would be the departments of public utilities, who have to do all that work. Then we need the state planners and designers. The transmission owners, generally known as TOs, will need to address the build out of the onshore grid to integrate these resources. We will also need people at the grid operators, known as the regional transmission organizations or independent system operators. And then we'll also need people at the DOE and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission level. And we simply don't have them. As a result, we at the state side, since the states do most of the purchasing of the off-taking of much of the offshore wind, not the federal government. So we are working very hard. All the New England states have jointly put together a New England Energy Vision, and we have been recently reaching out to other states along the Atlantic coast and up to the Canadian Maritime provinces so that we can do a coordinated set of developments. This is not just the contracting, but it's also the design and development of how to sequence this. We've actually reached out to our European colleagues as well. It costs $24 million just to move the ships across the ocean to begin some of this work. So we find instead of competing with each other, if we coordinate in the scheduling and development, we can leverage the necessary vessels and the various people that we were just hearing about, the mariners, so that we can get the most effective use out of the resources that we have. So in short, what are we doing? Well, as this is the first time I've had an opportunity to say this, it came out of a meeting we had last week. The National Association of State Energy Officers, NASIO, working with the Department of Energy, the national labs, and working with the New England and Northeast states, have decided we're going to start thinking about setting up a program to train the trainers. In other words, we're supposed to come up with a system. It takes about 2 years to take a person to train them to be able to do the state and federal kind of work that we're talking about. And this is what we need: accountants, we need economists, we need engineers, and we need planners. And so what we're doing is reaching out to our community colleges. We even have a system we're talking about working with our universities so that we can actually have scholarship positions to bring people in, which will be 50% set aside for minority and disadvantaged communities because of the need to have an inclusive workforce. And so we are aggressively considering how to set up the process so where we can train the people who will actually design and upgrade our transmission grid so that we can integrate the offshore wind. The good news is we're going this direction. The sad news is we should have done this 2 years ago, but we have to do it. So I just wanted to say that we are aggressively considering this. If anyone has ideas they wish to share, suggestions, we are definitely interested in hearing these. And once again, this is Bob Snook at Connecticut Deep, and now I will turn this over to Jennifer.
Thanks, Bob. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jen Downing. I'm the Executive Director of the New Bedford Ocean Cluster. Appreciate the opportunity to contribute to today's conversation. So New Bedford's economy and culture has been for generations tied to the ocean. The Port of New Bedford was once the world's most profitable whaling port back in the 19th century. And since that time has evolved into the highest grossing commercial fishing port in the US. And this success has created an opportunity for the Port of New Bedford to grow and diversify its ocean economy. Offshore wind is the most recent and lucrative opportunity coming and starting to take shape into our port. This in part is due to several industry advantages that we have in New Bedford. Most significantly, our port is the closest full service and deep water port to the largest wind lease areas. But it's also due to our city. Our mayoral leadership and our key economic development agencies here have been very proactive for well over a decade to position the city and the port to be a first mover for the industry. The New Bedford Ocean Cluster is a nonprofit organization, and we were created to support and advance Greater New Bedford's blue economy. We're modeled after several ocean clusters or supply chain clusters that have been very successful in Europe and other parts of the world. In these cases, these coastal communities have been very successful in making their ports more profitable and sustainable using an ocean cluster concept. Next slide, please. Our mission is to leverage our maritime strengths to attract investment to the port, to support the formation and growth of local maritime businesses and create more ocean value from our resources in the ocean, and ultimately to drive employment and local wealth. Serving as a marine business association for Greater New Bedford, the New Bedford Ocean Cluster is trying to help to facilitate collaboration and networking between maritime businesses to share information and promote business opportunities. We're trying to make it easier for businesses in the marine space to identify supply chain partners or partners that might be valuable for projects to create new business opportunities. We are bringing greater national and international visibility to our port and our marine businesses through marketing and business recruitment efforts. And we're serving as a clearinghouse for information for business to business activity and a convener around maritime businesses locally. Our vision is to create a model for commercial collaboration between port industries, and while ambitious, ultimately establish New Bedford as the leading ocean economy on the East Coast. Next slide, please. So while the Port of New Bedford is our focal point, we are a regional effort, and our approach is to work collaboratively with the private sector, public sector, and academic institutions to advance 4 interrelated marine industries. Those are listed there. So aquaculture, commercial fishing and processing, innovation and technology, and offshore renewable energy. Research on industry clusters has shown that development is most successful when insight and skills and technologies from various fields merge. So an intentional focus of our work at the New Bedford Ocean Cluster is not just advancing each one of these industries, but also promoting their intersection. Next slide, please. So offshore wind has been a big focus for the Ocean Cluster since we launched about 1.5 years ago, and that's really given due to the arrival of Vineyard Wind 1 project in the Port of New Bedford, which is being assembled in our port. We have a couple other projects in the pipeline, and just overall, the industry is advancing here in New Bedford quickly. Our focus has been on supply chain development, supporting Vineyard Wind 1, particularly, and Vineyard Wind is the developer as well as their top tier suppliers to connect with local businesses and workers that can support their project. So we launched this pilot program called Act Local with their support, and it's really focused on identifying and understanding available contract and job opportunities directly from the OEMs and tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. Informing the community about these opportunities through outreach and events, and making grassroots introductions and connections wherever possible between those buyers and sellers. Engaging the commercial fishing industry has been very important and key to our work. It's that intersection point between the offshore, our 2 pillars. It's really important. And there are opportunities, as Joel pointed out earlier, for maritime to get involved in offshore wind with proper training. We are very committed at the Ocean Cluster to the proposition that these 2 industries should not just exist, but be successful together. Next slide, please. So I'll end here on this last slide. One of the questions we were asked to consider today is how we can ensure that the offshore wind industry evolves in our communities in a way that's equitable and inclusive. And so I have a few thoughts here that I want to share. And these aren't new ideas, but I think it's important to reinforce them. And Joel pointed this one out. So I think there's a huge opportunity around increasing and marketing efforts to connect and prepare our existing maritime workforce to jobs in offshore wind. So in New Bedford, this is particularly true. Our maritime workers are very skilled. They're very entrepreneurial. They're experienced in onshore and offshore operations. But they need training to repurpose their skills and services, and it doesn't happen quickly. So we've got to get on this. That picture there is an example of a win in this regard, and so that's Klaus Moeller, the CEO of Vineyard Wind, and one of our local fishing captains, whose boat was certified and upgraded, and crew was trained appropriately so that they can do safety work for that project. So we want to see more of those kinds of things happening. I think it's important to emphasize pre-training and pre-apprenticeship programs, how key they are. We need to meet people where they are, and we need to increase programs that can remove those barriers to unemployment. This is particularly important, again, in an EJ community like New Bedford. We're very fortunate on the South Coast to have offshore wind trainings like what's being offered at Mass Maritime currently, as well as what is to come at Bristol Community College through the National Offshore Wind Institute. But we actually have to prepare people for those programs, right? And this might look like basic needs and wraparound services. Mass Hire, Greater New Bedford, PACE, a social service agency in New Bedford are offering those kinds of programs, but we need more of them, and we need to be intentionally connecting them with the offshore wind industry. And then in terms of pre-apprentice programs, being able to provide low cost, low stake programs like building pathways to support people to transition into these careers. Early engagement of the future workforce, I think, is really important. We need to create a pipeline of resources that starts at adolescence with awareness and information and goes all the way to job training and placement. If we're going to create the next and necessary generation of workers in construction and STEM occupations to support offshore wind, then we need to start engaging people earlier. So there's a big need, and I think a gap in our middle and high schools around these kinds of programming. High school programs could be offering internships with direct employers, job matching efforts. There's a lot of possibilities there, and targeting them in priority communities like New Bedford will start to create that upward mobility for folks. And then finally, and I'm glad Mark is speaking next because he is the expert, is creating an ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship, something we're thinking a lot about in New Bedford, both to support our existing maritime industries in adapting and identifying new solutions that can support their businesses to grow and innovate, but ensuring that we're creating the environment for startup activity and new businesses. So I will stop there. Thank you again for the opportunity, and I'll pass it to Mark.
Thank you, Jennifer. Hi, so Mark Wang, we're with See Ahead. We're based headquartered in Cambridge. We also operate out of Providence, Rhode Island, and Gulfport, Mississippi. We're just hitting our 5-year anniversary. Next slide, Dan. So big picture, our ethos, we're mission driven, and the thesis is what we call this theory of change, is that there's a huge economic opportunity off our coast, the global blue economy, but that also means that the stress and the pressure on the ocean is also increasing. So we're looking for that triple bottom line, and our theory of change is that innovation, STEM-based innovation, startups can play a role in driving a theory of change. And the impact is two things. It's not just environmental, but also on our community, particularly creating new economy jobs that are not just for the techies and the data scientists who will be fine, but also for the those who live on the coast who have been on the lower end of the income disparity. Next slide. Yeah. So my background, I was a marine engineer, but spent 15 years in clean tech, 10 of it creating standing up GE's clean tech venture group. So just a step away from the coast economy for a half a second is that if you benchmark other historically large siloed sectors and the current evolution that they're going through, right? Coal-fired, central utilities, distributed, renewables, automotive to electric and AI, food, big food into more sustainable and organic. Startups played a role in the current evolution or even disruption in all of these. So that's our thesis, is that what we call blue tech is that innovation may not necessarily solve all the problems, but we think it's a new dog in the fight, so to speak. Next slide. So this slide is not necessarily intuitive, and this is how we define the universe of innovation that can go out to sea, particularly off our coast. The obvious is, of course, the marine biology, oceanography, marine engineering groups, but this is probably why we are headquartered in Boston. Cambridge is this idea that there's a lot of crossover technologies. We see a lot of entrepreneurs who don't know anything bow from a stern, a shell from a fin, but they have an interest in going out to sea, and we seek to bridge those type of entrepreneurs and those other sectors that want to work on the coast. Next slide. So what do we do exactly? Our platform is a venture studio platform. The first thing we do is we do catalyze. We think the ocean is still an afterthought. The ocean economy on our coast is still an afterthought. So we do a lot of what is blue tech events, design competitions, and as such. But the anchor of our program is really what we call build. We opened the East Coast's first dedicated blue tech incubator, and we just recently closed off the first pilot accelerator down in the Gulf Coast, a much different ecosystem. So we're actively recruiting our fourth cohort right now for Blue Swell in New England. And then lastly, if these companies can't get funded, it's all moot. So until the US Navy JAG office tells us we can't use the Blue Angels, that's the program that we call, that is essentially doing early stage investment through an angel syndicate. And lastly, so we can move faster on some of the most high performing potential companies that we see, we're forming a fund, an early stage venture fund that's fully integrated into this platform. Next slide. So the next couple of slides are some of the companies that come through our platform. It's busy. I think that's a good thing. It just shows you the amount that there is a lot of innovation. I'll just highlight a couple quickly. In Blue Swell, Sea Deep spinning out of Tufts hyperspectral imaging to get more characterization to understand what's underwater, particularly, let's say we're going to drop cables off the coast. Ithaca Clean Energy, Fairhaven, right outside of New Bedford. Our coast is going to get a lot busier, more shipping, more offshore wind construction. You still have the seafood community. You got people using the water for pleasure, etc. Ithaca is looking at a spatial approach to compile the data of who's doing what, and the idea of making it easier and even predictive of what is happening off your coast, no matter what stakeholder you are from the ones I just listed. Aloft just finished our program as well. We've encouraged them as a wind-powered, AI-driven augmentation to a vessel to reduce your emissions. We've encouraged them to focus on Jones Act, which is the offshore wind sector for us on the East Coast, because there is offshore wind innovation happening in deep sea shipping led by Northern Europeans and the Asians. So we specifically said, look, we're getting our working waterfront on the East Coast being asked for carbon footprint. We think that's your best opportunity, so you don't have to fly anywhere. Next slide. Down in the Gulf Coast, all of these companies are not from the Mississippi, New Orleans area. I'll just highlight one, BX, Singapore, an AUV, and the founders do not sleep. They fly all around the world, and one of the projects they have is with an offshore wind company in Northern Europe, looking at scouring that's happening with the underwater cables. Next slide. So our angels, so not every company has to go through our program. And here we have everything from, let's say, Fuel Trust, which is digitizing a very analog system of refueling our vessels. So the idea is that you're gonna have to not only count, but you have to report. It could be not just carbon, but it could be NOx and your traditional criteria emissions. We'll go next slide. This we all know is the opportunity, once in a generation opportunity for us on the East Coast. And next slide, Dan. So this is how we break up specifically the offshore wind sector on the opportunities, right? It includes of course, workforce development. Next slide. And an example here is Vinci, which I think many of you on the call maybe know is Vinci went through our incubator, virtual reality, and what we think they represent is he can code for anybody, but now he has developed an offshore wind training virtual reality suite, and he's spending his time in the New Bedford area instead of just always staying in Boston. And last slide, and I'm done. C-Track just finished our accelerator program, spun off the former professor from Caltech JPL, looking for more data off the coast, including feeding more accurate temperature data for our hurricanes, as well as looking for marine mammals in the Gulf Coast. Can easily apply farther north on the East Coast as well. I think I'm gonna give it back to you, Farah.
Thank you very much, Mark. That was great. And thank you to all the speakers in the first panel. You gave us a lot to think about. I have some questions, but I think there were a couple in the chat. Eric, did you pick up any questions. I'm having trouble finding them now. Oh, I have one. The question is wondering if any of the panel members, and I'm thinking probably this would be directed to Joel or Bob, could you speak to the extent to which you see long-term job opportunities for folks trained for jobs in the construction phase of wind farm projects in their communities?
I'm happy to jump in on that. I think of offshore wind in 4 segments. You have a, I don't know, 5 to 7 year segment in pre-construction. That's everything to get ready to go. Construction itself is usually about a 2-year window. And then O&M is 25, give or take. And then you have the 4th, which is decommissioning, some distant future we don't need to worry about today, except to make sure it's permanent. Construction's a 2-year project, so the circus comes to town. You're seeing it if you go down into Bedford literally today. You're seeing everything start to roll in. Construction will start. It'll keep going until it's done sometime next year. And then there may be another project in Massachusetts, or there may be another project in some state between here and Virginia. And so to the extent that people are willing to move around, or their union that they're involved in can move them around. And if you're on the shore side, that's probably less likely. If you're on the marine side, it's probably more likely. I think the jobs are very, like all construction projects, the jobs are going to be temporary there. Where if you're looking for something more permanent, O&M, once the O&M phase starts, and that starts the day the turbine is commissioned, you have usually 5 years of warranties that all the various companies that put it together have to honor. That's usually outsourced to local companies, or companies that can do the work that are specialized, combination of both. These are going to be opportunities that will last for the life of the field. And so there's absolutely, New Bedford we've been talking about, and our vision at FOSS is we see our terminal supporting construction, but it's really being designed to support the operations and maintenance side. So you want to think about the kind of job you want, and then think about, the kind of training that'll get you, kind of in the various unions or the various organizations that'll be doing that kind of work.
Yes,
Great.
Bob, I would agree with what Joel just said. I would also like to point out the scale that we're talking about. There is the Biden administration 30 gigawatts by 2030, but that's not really the real number. I mean, 80 to 100 gigawatts is certainly possible on the Atlantic side, or even more. So, and the way the states are thinking now is that we will be staggering the build out. So while it takes, several years to do the planning and then a couple of years to do the construction, as Joel was saying, there are plans as we go further for other areas up and down the East Coast. So yes, if we can have a workforce on the wet side, the marine side, that's willing to move with the construction schedules, there's going to be significant amount of work for decades. In fact, I doubt we'll have completed that by the time the first terminals are being decommissioned and repurposed or reused. So I see that even on the construction side, something you normally think of as a short 1 to 2 years, but there's going to be a lot of those over the next 2 decades, and then maintaining them, and then of course rebuilding them, or decommissioning or rebuilding.
Thanks, Bob. I have a question for Jennifer, focusing on the work that you're doing with existing companies in your area that have some play in the offshore wind space. What are the key, if any, gaps, capacity building needs, upskilling, or facilities improvements that you're seeing in the companies that you work with in order to be prepared to enter into the offshore wind space?
Yeah.
What does that transition look like?
Yeah. So I think our role at the New Bedford Ocean Cluster, we're not doing direct technical assistance, but what we are is trying to learn about what the needs are in terms of products and services, then communicate that with businesses that might have adjacency into the industry. And from there, we're trying to support them with getting connected to resources that can then help them in terms of whether it's a capital upgrade to equipment or other resources and training. I think what we're seeing right now in the outreach that we're doing is there's an understanding of how some of their products or services might fit, but there's a bit of a long road to really understanding how they fit. And so when we're thinking about supply chain development and assistance, I think we're going to need to get to a point with our trainings that are very specific and almost granular on a granular level, depending on the area of supply chain that you are in. There are so many different parts of a project. There's different packages and components and areas, from the blades and the towers and substations and cables. And each one of those areas has so many different areas of the supply chain. And so what's really interesting to me, and what I'm seeing when I talk to people in Europe, is that technical assistance is really getting into the deeper levels of looking at particular areas of the supply chain, aligning with companies that may have potential there, and really digging into those details, taking experienced companies, linking them with less experienced companies, and helping them to learn from each other. And I think that the offerings here in the United States are not quite that specific, but I think that's where we're going to be moving, is really looking deeply at different areas of the supply chain and having to get very specific about what those companies will need to enter into the industry.
Great, thanks, thank you. Eric, do you have any questions from the audience coming out of the chat? Hearing none. I have another question for this time from Mark. I'm wondering, as you, if you could talk just a little bit about, again, the skill sets building that you need to do for folks that have great ideas, have entrepreneurial plays that they want to put into, that they think have links to the offshore wind industry. What is the type of assistance that's needed to help them to link specifically with offshore wind needs? What are the things that you need from the industry to help build those bridges to new technologies, to the innovation community?
Thanks, Farah. So we tend to work early stage, and as I mentioned earlier, it's not all of our companies come from a marine maritime background, right? Like VinCVR is a case study. So eventually, while they're with us, three questions always come up at some point. Can you get me in front of industry or the Port of New Bedford or the equivalent? Number two is they're always looking to hire. And then, my topic was digital, right? I hope I came across that all the example companies that I gave, they're STEM based. They're if they're not directly, they're indirectly on data, advanced sensors to data, for example, autonomous. And so they're always looking to hire and compete for workers. And third, of course, is funding. But the first one is that they need to eventually gauge industry or the public sector stakeholders, and at some point they need a pilot and put something in the water. That's not in the Charles River. Yeah, that'll be somewhere in New Bedford, and that's one of the reasons why we're in the Gulf Coast, because that infrastructure there doesn't have the population density of the Northeast, but it has warm water and a lot of the large U.S. government agencies. Yeah.
Great.
I'll just add, Farah, that I think relevant to my question and also Mark's, the ability to connect is really important, to be able to connect either an entrepreneur or a small local business with a top tier supplier or industry, just to make that connection so they can learn from one another is really important. And that is sometimes a big barrier. So in our case, that's where we're trying to assist, right? Developing those relationships, higher level industry, as well as in the local community, and making those connections. Because from the day-to-day, entrepreneurs and small businesses, they're running their business. And so that takes a lot of time and attention to do, and they don't always have the bandwidth to do that extra work. And it's key.
Great. Good point. Thank you. Dan, do we have time for one more question? Okay. And this is for Bob. I'm really interested in your comment about the public sector jobs, the regulators around the transmission space. So there's actually a skill set that's involved there that we have to plan for. What kind of training do you imagine around those topics that will be different than folks are getting? And who do you see trying to pull into those roles, people with engineering backgrounds, people with public policy backgrounds. What does that look like?
Yes, it's something we've been addressing rather aggressively here in Connecticut as we built out a transmission team for working with the entire New England region. One, it helps if the states cooperate so that each state doesn't have to reproduce the entire team. And we're fortunate, all 6 New England states are cooperating on transmission development and build out. We need different skill sets. Economists. We need economists to do the modeling of what the economic impacts would be. We take those generally from the schools, and we can then get them integrate them into the sort of subspecialty of energy economy. But we're pretty good. We're very comfortable with the economics graduates we get. Rate specialists, there's no school that makes rate specialists. So we bring in people with an interest who have some statistics or math background, and then we send them off to the NARUC, the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners training programs. It's called Rate School, and they learn a skill set there. For design and transmission, we've been trying to get engineers and have not succeeded. It's very difficult. And the handful that the 2 we did train are now working at consulting firms making easily twice what they were making here. So what we've been concentrating, and the poli-sci majors for the policy stuff, we get plenty of those. But what we're trying to find is people with the technical degrees or experience in engineering. Find them ones who are interested in working in the policy side from a clean energy perspective. And then we try to get them, trained up using, sometimes the ISO New England has, for example, onboard training webinars you can self-teach. In addition, we try to get them connected to the various transmission companies. In a sense, they do like almost internships, and it takes about 2 years. So those are some of the skill sets, and those are some of the programs we're working on here in Connecticut.
That's great. It's really great to hear about your support for filling those jobs and the real active engagement in the state in addressing this challenge. Well, I think we're ready for the next panel. That was really interesting and set some context and did just what I was hoping in terms of really broadening the look of what offshore wind job opportunities is going to look like. And so now we're switching to the other side of the equation. And I'm very excited to have this group of real experts and thought leaders in building the pipeline that we need. And I appreciated Jennifer's comments, really did a great job of teeing up this topic of what does the pipeline look like? It's not just about a single course or a curriculum or one training module. It's about connecting those things to students, to inspiring them, and then to supporting them every step along the way so that they can achieve success. And these are all folks that are working in these areas very deeply, some of whom have exposure to the offshore wind industry, and some who are newer to learning about it. So we're really looking and excited about the opportunity for potential new partnerships and exposing the greater offshore wind communities to these thought leaders in capacity building for workforce, particularly in an equity context. So I will introduce our 4 speakers. First, we have Bob Chen, who is the Dean of Environmental Studies at UMass.
Today, so that I can
excuse me,
things like the
somebody needs to mute their mic. Thank you. We have Bob Chen, UMass School for the Environment Dean, and he's going to be joining us remotely by video, pre-recorded video. He was very sorry he couldn't be here for the discussion, but looks forward to connecting with everyone afterwards if there are questions or follow-up. Second, we have Chris Bolzen. She's Executive Director of the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute and the Gloucester Biotechnology Academy. This is a very exciting organization that I'm engaged with and has a really amazingly successful model for training students to meet direct industry needs that we think might have some, definitely has relevance to the offshore wind space and is a good model for us to be looking at. Rhea Gordon from Elevate New England is the person who's working to bring that pipeline along from those middle school and high school years and really support that opportunity connection for diverse communities and for students that might not otherwise be exposed to or have the opportunity to pursue some of these new exciting opportunities. And then Jeanette Davis, Associate Professor at Hampton University, will be talking at the university level about the connection between higher education, internships, and the bridging that's needed to prepare students to participate in industry opportunities. So Dan, with that, I'll ask you to pull up Bob's video. And
So
I'll just,
Bob's video is just being brought up now in a second. Sorry, Farah.
that's okay. I just want to remind everybody to please put your questions in the chat. We'd love to be answering your questions instead of ours. So if you have any questions for the past panel, also just put them in the chat and we'll have some time for open conversation at the end.
And Molson, I'm not sure if it can be any bigger than, oh, perfect. Thank you so much. Looks wonderful.
We need multiple educational pathways that include workforce training, degree programs, and micro-credentials, low barrier ways for students to enter into the multiple pathways. We need to embrace equitable practices that we include all of the demographics of the people that can be working in this space. And we want to meet people where they are, particularly in the communities and the coastal communities where they live. And we want to include experiential learning. We know this is very effective when you have authentic learning experiences, multiple authentic learning experiences that get people interested in the type of career that they are looking for and might not even be know that they're interested in. All of these things together will work forward to a healthy offshore wind workforce. I want to start with this analogy about a tree, thinking about how people enter into careers. Any number of authentic experiences, watching something on TV, hearing something from a friend about wind or offshore wind or clean energy, a museum event, a K-12 classroom curriculum piece, an experience, etc. All of these authentic experiences build upon each other and create the opportunity for people to become interested, engaged, and pursuing an offshore wind workforce career. But we know that this is not a pipeline, and that there's multiple successes, not just that you're an offshore wind engineer, for example, at the end. And so we have to consider that all of the leaves and blossoms at the end of these interests should be celebrated. You could be a sensor developer, you could be an engineer, you could be an academic, you could be a movie producer that makes films about offshore wind, et cetera. All of these are part of the healthy ecosystem. The problem with the current system is that for hundreds of years, we've developed this system, this educational system and employment system that makes people jump through certain hoops, like take the SATs or write a college application or go through an interview the way that it's structured. And so we can help people squeeze through the trunk, and we have bridging programs and training programs for this. But we also have to think as a system, how do we widen the trunk and be more accommodating for the people meeting where they are and where they come from and the assets that they have that will all contribute to a healthy offshore wind workforce. We want to remain student-centered. We at UMass Boston have in our College of Science and Math over 70% students of color over the entire university, over 50% first-generation students. We're a minority-serving institution. And because of that, we have expertise, the faculty have expertise at differentiating their assessments, their learning opportunities for students across all of these areas, and we have lots of best practices to share with everyone. We want to celebrate cultural wealth, the things that are not often measured in the current system. Multiple languages spoken, relational connections with their community in these areas, local knowledge, et cetera. And we want to make sure that we develop the curriculum and have access to the multiple pathways that is considering the cultural wealth of these students that are potentially here. And we know that a sense of belonging is important, and a couple strategies that we know work, forming cohorts that are supportive and increase the resilience of people along the career ecosystem, micro affirmations rather than micro aggressions, which we know cause people to step out of the ecosystem. Micro affirmations build resilience to keep you in the system. The system needs to change, and we are the system, to adapt to the changing demographics, the majority minority demographics that we have, that we need for the offshore wind workforce. And just one last point on one of the strategies that's being proposed, micro-credentials. Can we lower the barrier to a $50,000 a year degree and entering into a 4-year degree program to meet people where they are in coastal communities, career changers that might want to take one single 6-hour module for $100 to try to do this? Can we do this in the weekends and evenings to accommodate full-time work online, or some combination, whatever accommodates the student learning preferences? We want to be adaptable, and so we're starting with these as a non-credit sort of option, but designing them so they will be stackable for credit to get into degree programs, et cetera, but don't have to. We can get the actual skills and everything that can be used by employers right away to hire these folks. And therefore, we need to co-develop them with industry and community partners so that we know that they meet the demands of the ever-changing workforce. We don't think of this as a single institution that can do this, but we need to collaborate among sort of all of the area institutions. So thank you very much for listening. I'm very sorry that I cannot join the panel discussion, but I'm happy to continue this conversation with any of you at any time. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Next, we'll be teeing up Chris Bolzen from GMGI.
Great. Thank you, Farah. Thanks for including me in all of this. I'm Chris Bolzen, the Executive Director of the Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute. I'm going to tell you a little bit about our organization so you can understand why Farah included me, and share with you some of our best practices in workforce development that I hope will be relevant as you develop new programs. Next slide, please. The Gloucester Marine Genomics Institute was founded 10 years ago in the hope that the ocean could be a renewed source of opportunity for Cape Ann. Our aggressive, ambitious mission is to address critical challenges facing our oceans, human health, and the environment through innovative scientific research and education. Our goal is to bring world-class science and transformative workforce development to Gloucester's historic waterfront so that we can catalyze our regional economy. And 10 years in, we're exceeding the original goals of our founders. So I'll tell you a little bit about the framework we use to do this and how workforce development plays a role in all of it. Next slide, please. We have a strategy triad that guides our work: research, education, and science community. We have a scientific team that has established a Marine Biotechnology Institute powered by genomics. Currently, we have 13 scientists who are looking at 3 different areas of scientific research. We're located right in the heart of Gloucester's working waterfront. And our science goals are guided by 3 main program areas: biomedicine and biotechnology, ecosystem function and health, fisheries, and aquaculture. By doing innovative scientific research, we hope to bring new jobs, new opportunity, and new discoveries from our ocean to the local economy. Our education initiative, which is what I am primarily going to talk to you about today, has created a vibrant science learning environment that trains local high school graduates to become professional laboratory technicians in the life sciences and biotech industries. We've now been doing this for 7 years. We have 85 graduates in industry, and we are now training between 40 and 50 trained technicians a year in our program. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. Our third area is our science community, and this is the work that we do to try to attract scientific organizations to Gloucester and the surrounding areas. Our hope is that we can convene and attract companies from Boston, Cambridge, and beyond, and show them that Cape Ann is a fantastic place to do science. One of the most interesting parts of this work over the last 10 years has been the fact that we have a trained workforce, and we led with our Academy initiative. The fact that there is a workforce here has been the single biggest factor in attracting new companies to come to the region. So, workforce seems to be the tail that wags the dog, and is the reason why we now have dozens of scientific careers and opportunities and pathways in Gloucester that didn't exist 10 years ago. Next slide, please. So here's our academy. This is a view inside the original laboratory. We've created a vibrant science environment that takes young adults ages 19 to 30 roughly, and we train them over the course of 2 semesters to master techniques to work in a laboratory environment. It's divided into 2 semesters, like I said. The first is a molecular biology and DNA framework, followed by a second semester in bioprocessing and cell culture. So we recently expanded into the biomanufacturing arena, and that was really led by what we saw happening in industry. There's a high demand for students and lab technicians with cell culture and biomanufacturing skills. Everything we do hands joined with industry. The equipment that we develop, the protocols that we teach, and the internships that our students pursue, everything's been identified, working hand in hand with industry partners. We want to be teaching what they need students and graduates to be skilled at. So it's a 7-month training program in Gloucester, followed by a required 3-month paid industry internship. Next slide, please. Here's just a few highlights of how this has played out and the success factors that we've seen. Former Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito called this the workforce development model for an innovation economy. 80% of our students graduate, which really surpasses most vocational norms. 95% of them go on to pursue careers in life sciences, biotechnology, or a 4-year college degree in biology or chemistry. That was an accidental outcome that we never anticipated. Our facilities are state-of-the-art. We've got cutting-edge teaching labs, classrooms, and a proprietary curriculum. And as I said, we align it monthly with industry needs. We doubled the size of the facility in 2021 with a grant from the state of Massachusetts to add the biomanufacturing capacity and equipment. And we're now evaluating options to extend our reach into Boston. We've expanded our programs to include STEM initiatives for middle school and high school youth. Touching on the tree that Bob Chen demonstrated and some comments from Jennifer Downing, one of the things that we've learned is you have to start early. You need to attract the students and tell them about these opportunities during their middle school and high school years, because you can't expect a 19 to 30-year-old to show up on your doorstep and say, okay, I'm ready to be a lab technician. So the more we can ingrain the knowledge of these career opportunities and pathways into their early childhood experiences, the more reasonable it is to expect them to pursue these challenges when they're graduating. We work with young adults who are struggling to connect with college or career. And one of the things we've learned is that to successfully graduate the vocational adult learner, you need to provide significant wraparound services to get them across the finish line. And that could be in the form of stipends, childcare, food security, housing support. And this is where these programs get expensive, but it's also where they're incredibly successful and provide phenomenal outcomes that nobody ever anticipated. So I'm happy to tell you more about it. I don't want to go over my time if there are any specific questions about our model. Thank you.
Next up, we have Rhea Gordon from Elevate New England. Take it away, Rhea.
Great. First of all, I just want to say thank you to all of you. This has been so interesting, and I've already learned so much in being in this webinar. So I'm Rhea Gordon, the Executive Director of Elevate New England. And again, thank you for the opportunity to discuss offshore wind workforce and to maybe somehow contribute to this discussion. My hope is to be involved in further discussions of this exciting opportunity. And I just, before I go into what Elevate does, I just want to just say that, Chris, thank you so much for all that you do at GMGI. We actually have a student in first year participating in this program, and she is now going to be starting her internship June 5th with the #1 choice on her list. Her name is Malin. Not sure if you know her, but I know Lauren, she's on this panel. She knows her, and she was struggling in Lowell. She's one of our Elevate mentees, and now she's on the road to success. And I'm so excited for that, and so excited to bring you a few more. I think this is a great model for kids that are in our communities that struggle with college academics, that can really learn a skill and really be successful. So a little bit about Elevate real quickly. Elevate New England helps high risk, or I say promise, urban public school students to graduate high school with a workable plan for their future. Breaking the cycle for a lot of times for our young people is poverty. We have two sayings here in Elevate: no one gets there alone. And I'm sure all of you can agree and know someone, a mentor or coach that has led you to where you are. And once in Elevate, always in Elevate. Our mission is to build long-term, life-changing relationships with New England urban youth, equipping them to thrive and contribute to their communities that they're in. Our nation's urban youth are one of the greatest crises in the United States today. The average public high school graduation rate in the nation's largest 50 cities are like at 80 percentile. Here in Lowell, it's dropped down to like 76, 77% high school graduation. So that's pretty low, but I'm happy to say that Elevate students that have been with us in high school, we have graduated 98% of our class. There's approximately 10,000 students that drop out of Massachusetts public schools each year, and it's a big cost to the taxpayers, as you all are well aware of that. So we're trying to fix that problem by giving our youth the opportunities that you all have. Those opportunities that I heard about this morning has just flooded so many ideas in my head, because I know our young people would probably love the opportunity if given a real chance at it. And what I mean by that is exposure, 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 especially like some of you have mentioned, at a young age. And that's what Elevate can do. We can expose them with your help to these different opportunities. What makes Elevate a little unique over other nonprofits and organizations is that we do bring in full-time teacher mentors, and I can talk more about what a teacher mentor is, but our teacher mentor staff are from the exact similar ethnic and social background as the students they serve. So they look like the students they teach. We teach in the public schools. We have accredited elective courses, and every single day we are teaching in front of that class. They get 2.5 credits, and we teach them in character formation, life skills, and in leadership. The students in our classroom, we look at that as a bridge, first to educate as a teacher, but then second and most as important is to mentor them through their life journey. And that's after school nights and weekends. We build really strong relationships. And in this case, we can expose them to a lot of opportunities that they may have never had the opportunity to see or experience, or have anyone talk about those type of skills and career paths like you are all talking about this morning. Our second program is, second unique trait is we do have year-round program. We don't just stop after school ends. Our staff designs relationship building experiences during the school day, after school, weekends, and all over summer break. So we don't have a summer melt, where kids are disengaged from things learning. We also have a cross-age mentoring, which we teach our high school students in the Elevate program. They're trained to mentor the younger students. So there's that pipeline from 3rd grade to 12th grade, and then thereafter as we continue to coach those alumni that we have. For example, Maylin, that is in there, always encouraging and supporting her at GMGI as much as possible. So the long-term relational approach is really needed with the young people we serve. So that's a little bit about what we do. I'm looking at this opportunity to be here today to collaborate with all of you, to be able to expose our young people to these different career paths and skills, and just be a part of the conversation. I can talk a lot more about everything that we do and the successes that we've had. But I guess now my time is almost up, so I am going to just hand it over to Jeanette Davis.
Thanks, Rhea. That was great.
Good afternoon, actually, good morning, everyone. Still morning here. I'm Dr. Jeanette Davis. This was kind of already mentioned, but I'm a research professor at Hampton University. I'm also a best-selling author where I create literature around children's science books to, help young people see themselves in science and represented in science, and also founder of Sciences Everywhere LLC. And I've been working with a team of people here on the MOCEAN project to develop internship programs at Hampton University, a historically Black college and university, to expose undergraduates to marine science career paths overall. So just taking a step back here, as I've been working with this team, our overarching goal here is to really advance equity, inclusion, and access in nature inclusive offshore wind energy projects. And we want to do that through a series of things, including embedding traditionally underserved communities in environments where they have self-advocacy, where they can make great decisions for themselves and for their environment. So we really want to do this in an integrated approach. This was kind of already said about jobs that are created over the next 10 years or so. So we look at this project as playing a significant role in advancing economics and workforce development overall in New England offshore wind and industry. And again, particularly communities of color. As an HBCU, we obviously work with students of color. We are working with our students to give them an understanding of ocean and environmental sciences. All of our students are required to do research and or have internship opportunities to graduate. We also work on professional development with our students and resume building to prepare them for a variety of jobs, including academia, industry, government, whether that's local or federal government. I want to just recently say that we were awarded a racial equity and STEM education grant from NSF, where we are looking to develop an exciting new culturally relevant curriculum on ocean science to further advance our students' understanding and knowledge and prepare them for a changing workforce, including policy and industry. And some of the key components includes that self-efficacy, all the things that we've been talking about here, creating a sense of belonging, experiential learning, which was also talked about, and incorporating authentic experiences and enactments. These are all the things that we're finding that the research is pointing to create a sense of belonging. And these are the same components that we will be using within offshore wind energy and giving students the skills and tools to make decisions for themselves and their communities in a changing environment. So taking a step back, the overall, again, goal is to create this program where we'll optimize the professional development experiences that diverse students have at their internship sites. And we've been talking about preparedness, and a lot of us have been focusing on the skills that are needed for students, but I would like to take, time to also recognize that preparedness is not limited to just skills, it's also the working environment. We talk often about this concept of imposter syndrome of an individual where maybe those who are traditionally underserved or not represented may feel like they're imposters in a certain environment, but we're now moving towards this concept of imposter environment. So the question that we always ask ourselves is not just if the students have the skills, but one of the key questions are, do the environments have the cultural diversity awareness to support students? Are environments prepared? And so we want to focus on some key success factors. And again, some of these things were talked about. this concept of cohorts to make sure that our students have increased resilience, that they have what we're calling psychosocial safety, and this concept of peer-to-peer mentoring. So they kind of already have that inclusive safe space built into these opportunities. So we definitely want to make sure that students are in cohorts as they are doing these research opportunities. One speaker already talked about, making sure that there are paid internships and opportunities available for students. And so we're proposing a series of workshops and training for those who are bringing in students of color to participate in these internships. And we really want to focus on increasing cultural diversity awareness to create inclusive workplaces and mentorships for students. So again, but also offering mentors and workshops to host organizations so that we can center inclusion and belonging practices embedded in these internships. So I guess as I kind of wrap this up, because a lot of things were already said, is, when we think about engaging with industry and supporting building equity into recruitment practices, we definitely want to focus on a series of activities that will, again, increase cultural diversity awareness within these internship opportunities for both the students and the host organizations. And that will overall increase access to science careers and uniquely address structural barriers that are often deter retention in STEM education for those who are traditionally marginalized and underrepresented in this space. And with that, I will take any questions, and I look forward to collaborating with all of you moving forward.
Great, thank you so much, all of you. Can you hear me? Yes, okay. My screen is frozen, so hopefully, please let me know if you can't hear me. Somebody start talking. Thank you for those great comments, and you brought up some really great opportunities. And so I'd like to kind of go back to the first panel, because I hear questions and suggestions coming out of this panel. One of the biggest ones is that actually Jennifer started out on this track, is that industry needs to be engaged in the development and the support of these kinds of training programs. So I hear from both Ria and Jeanette some specific asks of industry for ways of supporting these opportunities. So I'm going to go back to the first panel and put Joel and Bob both on the spot to say, what do you think about this? What's your reaction coming both from the public sector as someone who's trying to develop a workforce engagement program, and Joel, from your experience in industry, what could industry be doing to address some of these needs on the other side of the pipeline and these opportunities to engage these students? Either of you have any comments?
Yeah, I didn't, my audio has been going in and out, so I apologize if this is not entirely responsive. I didn't actually hear most of your question, but I did want to riff off something that Jeanette was saying, because we're talking about, I was talking about bringing in people to be rate specialists and economists and planners, but we also need to change the organization so it can accept new people from diverse backgrounds. So that requires a conscious effort. It's not going to happen by itself. So we've been doing, at least at the state side, there's of course all sorts of internal training, but we have to give people the opportunity to grow. So we would be very interested. We have an equity and environmental justice team within the agency, and there's the Connecticut Environmental Justice Energy Advisory Commission, CJAC, which is actively working in this area, because we recognize that if we're going to succeed, we have to bring everybody in. In addition, I really do think it's important to reach out to younger people than we have been. We've been looking mostly at college graduates, but a lot of this stuff is going to be happening at the high school. A lot of the careers thinking people do is when, if they're going to succeed, they need these tools to start earlier. That's something which I was very much interested in hearing today, and something I think we could do better at the state.
Great, thanks, Bob. Joel, do you have anything to add, if you're still with us?
I
it's not-
could, Farah just mentioned that one of the things we're starting to do at the New Bedford Ocean Cluster is we're assembling industry-led advisory committees for each one of our pillars. And so we see this as an opportunity for us to step into our convening role, to get industry at the table, to be learning about very specific ways, right, that they can be engaged in these training programs, technical assistance programs, and then the MBOC helping to, spread that information right across the public sector, and hopefully make those connections there. But more to come. But I think that's a strategy we're using to try to understand better what that looks like.
Great. Thanks, Jennifer. I have a question for Chris. First of all, I understand you have an event coming up in November that folks might be interested in. So I'm going to give you a chance to do a little public service announcement. But just on this topic of industry connection, could you talk a little bit about what it's been like? A key part of your program is having industry internships available and industry interested in not just internships, but paid internships. And you've been very successful in making that happen. So could you talk a little bit about what that was like in the beginning? How did you approach industry? Were there barriers, resistance, and how you overcame them? That's a lot of questions, but maybe you can just touch on that and we can continue later.
Sure, and it continues to be a challenge. Breaking the bachelor's barrier to these roles has been probably the biggest lift in the program. Most of the roles our students go into have traditionally been filled by individuals with a bachelor's degree, and many of the firms in Boston and Cambridge tend to hire from MIT and Harvard for the jobs that we are trying to convince them, you don't need a graduate degree, you don't need a bachelor's degree to do this work. And so we've done it in, baby steps and success story after success story by sending our students in well-equipped. It only takes one successful student to help, start a new pathway forward. Similarly, if one student has a really challenging experience with an employer, that can also set us backwards. So you just have to keep going, supporting the student. And one of the things we've done is we have a required career skills curriculum that provides the student with the professional communication, resilience, interpersonal skills to be able to present even better and stronger than a bachelor's graduate might be able to present. And then we continue to provide mentoring beyond the training program period. So our training program and internship is 10 months, but the mentoring relationship goes on for 2 years. And so this provides, Jeanette talked about imposter syndrome. We experience that daily. So this provides a safety net and a safe space for the student to get moral support, career guidance, and lots of other help when they're on the job and struggling. One of the things we're trying to incorporate into our program for this fall is another topic some of the other speakers mentioned, and that's training for our employers to welcome a different type of student into their environment. Whether it's a student who doesn't have a college degree or comes from an underrepresented background, we want to create a good back and forth between the hiring manager and the team that will be welcoming our student into their lab. And that's been one of the ways to help move this work forward.
Great. And Chris, if I understand you have a workforce development conference or maybe you can put a link to it in the chat for folks. But
Okay,
mention
I'll
it
do
now and
that.
put a link in the chat.
What I'll also do is I'll make sure everyone who logged in here gets an invitation and a save the date, but it'll be happening November 9th in Gloucester. And the goal of this conference, it's primarily around STEM fields, but it's about creating new pathways for underrepresented individuals to enter these areas without a bachelor's degree, and supporting the different types of training programs and partnering with industry. So it gives about 3/4 of a business day worth of time, workshops, interactions, and networking opportunities for individuals to share best practices and create new relationships for industry and training program partnerships.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Well, Dan, I'm seeing that we're at 11:30. And so I just want to say a couple of things and then I'll turn it over to you. I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been, and particularly the panelists, this has been a really interesting conversation. It's done what I wanted it to do, which is bring up two sides of an equation that need to get bridged. And I'm hoping there might be some ongoing relationships developed here. I encourage everyone here to keep in touch with us about things we should be doing next. What's another conversation you'd like to have convened around these topics? There's a lot of work to be done and a lot of opportunity for some shared successes here. So thanks everyone. And let me turn it over to Dan for a closeout.
Farah, I think you have essentially closed it up. But I was going to ask people for a favor just before they hang up. And that favor is, we are going to make a recording of this available. And a nice way to show that a lot of people met was to show a lot of faces on a screenshot. So for those people who would be willing, who aren't presently sharing their video, it'd be great if you shared your video, and then I'll get a screenshot and then we'll say, hey, we had this meeting and a lot of people showed up. Matthew Taylor's looking a little bit fuzzy there, but that's just the way it is. Oh, there he is. Well, excellent. Okay, so hang there tight, and I'm going to take my screenshot. I think, whoops, Jennifer, I saw your note. Have to hang that up one more time. Shift, print screen. I should be good. You folks all have yourself the most marvelous day, and thank you very much again.